The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Welcome to Albany County News. I'm Mary Rozak, the Director of Communications for Albany County. And today we're going to talk for about 30 minutes or so about the Department for Children, Youth, and Families in Albany County. And joining me is the Commissioner, Gail Geohagen-Pratt. Welcome.
Thank you, Mary.
No stranger to this program. I know we've talked before.
Yes, I think this is my third or fourth time.
Or how many times? Lots of good things always going on with the Department for Children, Youth, and Families. It wasn't all that long ago when we had a very ornate and colorful 112 State Street median with the pinwheels.
Yes, so April is Prevent Child Abuse Awareness Month, and so the symbol for Prevent Child Abuse is the pinwheel. And so, you know, really it brings about, when you think of a pinwheel, that, you know, evokes happy thoughts, happy memories, as well as the resiliency of the pinwheel as it's being driven by the wind. And so really wanting to have that message associated with, you know, Preventing Child Abuse Month, and really talking about, you know, how to be able to instill resiliency within our youth, and also how to be able to keep them safe. And so April is the time. Certainly safety of children is a focus all the year, but in particular in April it's an opportunity really to highlight, you know, the efforts that are being made in order to keep children safe.
And the state office did something similar as well. It sounds like, was it something statewide?
Yes, it is a statewide, and it is the pinwheel again as being the symbol. You will see that state offices, community-based organizations, local municipalities will utilize this pinwheel as a symbol, and it'll take place in various events and forums. OCFS, the Office of Children and Family Services, they actually also had a pinwheel flower garden, if you will, outside of their offices, again, in recognition of this.
Well, no, go ahead. There was a lot of stuff going on in April.
There were, and so each year annually for April for Prevent Child Abuse Awareness, we have a poster contest, and so we reach out to the various school districts within Albany and ask if they would have students participate with the theme of what family means to me. And it's really an opportunity just to see what children have, what their thoughts are in regards to when they think of family. And
you had a lot. I think it was a banner year for
we did. We had well over 70 entrants into the contest, and it ranges from elementary to high school. And I tell you, when you see the depictions that they have in terms of what family means to them, and some of them are so cute. One in particular that stood out for me was, you know, our family lifts each other up, and then there was a picture of a ladder with each of the family members as it went up the ladder. Just, you know, very creative.
They are very creative. I know that there were many of them with rainbows.
Yes.
That really talked about hope. I know that there was one in particular that I saw that talked about the family is like a tree. It has so many branches.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because there are all kinds of ages that really take part in this, from young children all the way up to, you know, middle school, high school.
Yes, so yes, we reach out to the various elementaries, middle schools, and high schools, and you know, we really are looking for a cross-section of participation, and really want to be able to have all age groups depicted, and really to be able to see, you know, when you see from a young child through their eyes of how they see family, into an older youth, and sometimes there are commonalities, and sometimes there's a little distinction, but it's good to be able to have that information, and certainly it can inform us in terms of the work that we're doing.
Well, it was lovely to see at 112 State Street in the county office building, I believe, was it last year's, that were up in the hallway,
yes.
So that we could actually see all of the different entrants from last year. And so I'm going to guess that this year's entries will be in the hallway next April.
Exactly. And I will tell you, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback when folks come into the building and seeing all the posters. And again, the colors, the messaging, it's really uplifting, and it adds an ambiance to the lobby when you come in. And, as you're standing there waiting for the elevator, it gives you an opportunity to just look around and just to see the artwork and what the youth have to say.
April also was a time when there was a promotion for foster care and foster parents as well.
Yes, so we did, and it actually carries over into May, and so we really highlight that, unfortunately there are times when children are not able to stay in their home of origin, and so, part of that support system, if you will, is having foster parents that can provide that safety for whatever period of time is needed when a child is not able to be in their home. And so we really want to be able to highlight and to acknowledge that this is an important part of our system in terms of having foster parents who are committed to being that safety, support, and resource when there is a need for it. And so May is designated as Foster Care Awareness Month, and so we do a foster care walk that occurred May 8th, so last week or earlier this week. It's hard to believe how quickly time goes. And so we had a walk down by the Corning Preserve, and so we had some of our foster parents that were there. We had some of our foster care youth that were there, and then just the general community. And it's really just an opportunity. We do a half-a-mile walk with our banner, again, just to bring awareness. And then it's really an opportunity for the foster parents, for the foster care youth, and just the general community to be able to interact.
Being a foster parent is truly, you use the word committed, it really is a commitment. Tell me about what prospective foster parents do, the training and the checks and the applicant, whatever, all of that stuff. Let's walk me through the process.
Oh, yes. So, it begins with, submitting an application, and then there is a background process, so they have to be cleared through the state central abuse registry, and they also have to get a criminal background check. So there are definitely a lot of safety measures that come into play. Then we have what we call the MAP training, and it's a 10-week curriculum where it really provides a very foundational overview of what are some of the expectations that you can have, some of the experiences that you can have as a foster parent, and really try to give as realistic as a picture as we can, because I think sometimes when you see foster care depicted in social media or even on TV, it can have a glamorous aspect to it.
Sure.
And so really want, when anyone is really considering being a foster parent, that they recognize that there is the positive in terms of being a support and a resource for a youth in need, but that it is not always easy, that there are challenges associated with it. And so really to drive home that messaging, we actually have one of our longtime foster parents that actually co-facilitates that class. And so she is really able to provide that, first-hand account and experience that she's had. She's taken in quite a number of our youths, as well as adopted a number of our youth. She's adopted well over 6 of our youth. So exactly. So when you talk about having really experienced a lot of the ups as well as the downs that comes along with fostering, she is able to give that perspective. And we actually recently just had a graduation of 8 prospective foster families. So we're very excited about that. And as part of the graduation, we have a panel discussion. And on the panel, we have various systems that are represented. So we'll have a caseworker, we'll have an attorney for the child, we'll have the adoption attorney, we'll have foster parents. And this year, we actually had a foster care youth. And so again, the prospective foster parents have an opportunity to hear from each system that's represented, their view, their experiences, and through their eyes, that part of the system and how it all comes together as a whole. And I will tell you that it was so encouraging, because we had a couple of our Albany County foster parents, and some of the messaging that they drove home was about how it's important to try and build a positive relationship as much as you can with the bio parent, because regardless of the reason why that child may have come into care, it's important to have a relationship that is built around respect. So it was so encouraging to hear them, specifically coming from the foster parents, to have them giving that messaging, as well as talking about, sometimes, you get a child and you anticipate that maybe this child will be freed and you'll be able to adopt, and it may get up to that, 12th hour, 11th hour where you feel that this is going to happen, and then things change, and how to be able to manage that and those very real emotions that you go through. So, again, we can certainly talk about that from the clinical perspective, if you will, but there's nothing like the actual foster parents there who have experienced that, giving that firsthand account.
Sure. What do you, and several things that you said we're going to come back to, what do you hear as, is there one main reason or one common thread when people are coming forward and thinking about being foster parents? Is there one compelling reason usually that they say, this is why we want to do this?
It actually does vary, but at the core of it, it's feeling that they see a need and they want to be of assistance. Now, whether or not because they've had a personal encounter, if you will, with fostering, whether or not because maybe there were foster youth in their families when they were coming up, or if they may have gone through the system themselves as a foster care child, or just knowing someone else who did fostering and saw that and then felt that they wanted to pursue it as well.
Is it more common that it is that there are foster parents with a family, or simply foster parents with no children?
We get both, actually. So we do have some that have their own biological children in the home already, and then we have some that part of the reason that they may look to foster is maybe with the hopes that maybe they will also be able to adopt. So we do certify our homes as both foster home as well as pre-adoptive. So you can have a child that comes in and there may be the potential that that child may be freed for adoption. So that is a potential outcome as well. And so you do have some folks that will come in and will say that, we are certifying to be a foster home, but we would like to be able to, have an adoption as well.
So that impacts perhaps what child you may place there?
It does. We will take that into consideration because, recognizing that when a child comes into foster care, right there, that's a trauma. They are no longer in their home of origin. They are no longer with their parents or guardians. And so, that in and of itself is a trauma. And so when we are placing a child, we don't want to have to then move them again, because each time they move, that is an additional trauma. So the goal is at the time that a child is being removed from their home of origin, then looking to place them in a foster home that will be where they will be, whether they return home or if that ends up being where they will remain as an adoptive resource.
I know that we've talked in the past. I know that the ultimate objective is, whenever possible, to return a child to his or her biological parents.
Absolutely. That is actually the primary goal, is once a child comes into care, is to return to parent. But we also do concurrent planning. So while we are working for the child to return home, because we want to minimize the length of stay in foster care, we're doing concurrent planning. So yes, we are working for that child to return home, but we are also identifying an alternate plan in, if the return to home does not work out. If that is not successful, then we have another plan parallel to that. So that could be looking at a kinship resource. I will say that that is an area that is very much on the radar in terms of, if we're not able to return to the bio parent, can we identify a kinship resource in terms of a family member? Yes, exactly. Or there is what is called kinship guardianship, and so it's someone, and that the definition has been expanded recently, so it may not be someone who's related necessarily by blood, but if it's someone who has known the child for a significant amount of time and they have a substantive relationship, then that is someone who could be a resource for that child as well.
How often does fostering turn into an adoption?
Oh, that is a
You
good.
gave an example of a woman now who was fostered and adopted 6 times.
Yes, and it's interesting because it varies so much, and you can never necessarily predict how the outcome is going to be. So I honestly don't have that percentage of how often that happens, but it varies. It definitely varies.
I'm sure there are times when a match is not necessarily working out. How do you handle that?
Very carefully, because again, each time a child has to move, it's a trauma. And there actually are regulations in terms of if a child needs to be moved from a foster home. If it's on the basis of safety, there are regulations that go with that. There are notices that have to be provided to the foster parent as well if there is a removal that is being conducted on a basis of safety. If it is, you can have a foster parent that will make the request that they don't feel it's a good fit, and the process may look a little different, but still, we are very planful with that, because again, if we have one disruption, we're looking to make sure we don't have another disruption.
What are the age ranges? I mean, are we talking about children for the most part that are younger? Or is it a wide range?
It actually goes across the age spectrum, so up to 18 years of age, and we have babies. We'll have newborns from the hospitals. Usually those are circumstances where we have a parent who may have untreated substance use or untreated mental health. So at the time of birth, we may receive a report that may result in the child not being able to go home with the parent or parents. And then, we have our older adolescents that, again, we find what we're experiencing a lot and currently is we have youth that maybe have their own mental health, and we may have parents that have their own mental health. And as a child becomes older, as you can imagine, then it becomes more challenging to manage those behaviors. And so we find that that's driving a lot of our youth, especially our older youth, coming into care, because now you also have the circumstance of you're looking at the parents' behaviors, but you're also looking at the child's behaviors as well. And then you have, of course, the opioid epidemic, and that has certainly impacted our numbers of youth coming into care. We, 2-3 years ago, the number of foster care children in Albany County ranged between 175, 180, and currently we are, over 220, sometimes upwards of 230. It's just it definitely has been an uptick in the number, and it's not just representative of Albany County, it's representative of New York State as well as nationally.
Do you have enough foster parents?
No, in a word, and that's part of the reason why, as a department, we're actually doing diligent recruitment. We're working with the Office of Children and Family Services and their subcontractor, WRI Welfare Research Institute, really on how to be able to do focused recruitment of foster parents. And again, this is not just isolated to Albany County, again, across New York State and nationally, again, because of the increased number of children going into care, the need for foster parents to be able to have that, depth of resource, and recognizing that not every child can fit with every home, and so recognizing that, there is definitely, when we talk about the fit, there is a need to have that, expanse of resources available, so that if there is a particular youth that has a particular need, then we have a home that would be a good fit for that. And I will tell you, the areas that we've focused on is the diversity of our homes, because certainly the children that we have coming into care are diverse, and we want to be able to have a diversity of foster homes. We also have sibling groups, so when we have large sibling groups, we would like to be able to keep them together as opposed to have them in multiple homes separated, because again, trauma of being removed from your home, then trauma of being separated from your siblings. So we try to be mindful of that, and as well as older youth. A lot of our older youth tend to end up in group homes, and so we're looking to see if we can cultivate homes that are willing to take some of our older youth so they don't have to go into a congregate care setting.
We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. I am talking with the Commissioner for the Albany County Department for Children, Youth, and Families, Gail Geohagen-Pratt. So it sounds like it might be more challenging as we look at ages to place an older child than it is to place a newborn, let's say.
Yes, and one would think because you have to get up and do midnight feedings and change diapers.
Exactly.
But, babies are cute, and, especially in circumstances where someone is looking to maybe end up it culminating in an adoption,
Sure.
then, a baby tends to be more desirable. But I will tell you that, I will say that I have an affinity for older youth, and we have some incredible older youth that are in foster care that would love to see someone give them an opportunity. And I think unfortunately, when you again social media, the media, oftentimes there is not always the most positive images for older youth, and I think that extends to older youth in foster care. That somehow, if you have gotten to that point where you are older and still in foster care, there must be something wrong with you.
Right.
And so really being able to somehow find a way to take that stigma away and really just highlight the positivity of our older youth, their creativity, their smarts, their resiliency, and really being able to convey that with the general public.
Are there time constraints when it comes to you place, let's say you place an older child, or any child with a foster family? Is there a certain amount of time that
Yes.
they would stay?
So there is a certain
Or a limitation on how long?
Right. There is actually in regulations, ASFA, which is the Adoption and Safe Families Act, and it outlines the parameters in terms from when a child comes into care, day one, the clock starts ticking, and any child that's in foster care 15 out of 22 months, we need to identify then what is the permanency goal. So they can't just linger in foster care. So if 15 out of 22 months that the child has been in care, then we have to determine, are we then going to pursue termination of parental rights? Are we looking for a surrender of those of parental rights? Are we looking at this child being adopted? Are we looking at this child going with a kinship guardian? So there has to be some sort of planned permanency goal and resolution. And so we are held accountable as a department that we are following those guidelines. So, a child could be in a foster home for, a year, 2 years, whatever it be, but it has to be that there is an identified goal, permanency outcome for them.
So it is possible, though, even with a goal and an outcome, that the child would then come out of fostering, but may in fact end up in foster care again.
Yes, so that is actually one of the standards that we are assessed, each counties, in terms of what they call re-entry. So you have a child that comes out of foster care, and do they re-enter foster care, and in what time frame? And so again, tying it back to trauma, you have a child, he comes into care, they return home only to go back into foster care. What caused that? Was it that their entering back home wasn't planful? It wasn't, all the circumstances that needed to be addressed were not addressed? Or what were the factors? What created the circumstance that they were able to go home but not remain home and re-enter back into care?
So the people watching this, if they are interested, you said there's a 10-week course, training course. Is that every day? Is that all day Saturdays? How does that work?
It's actually once a week.
Okay.
So when we actually do hold the curriculum, it is a once a week. And so we just completed one again last week, actually. And so we have another one slated for this fall.
Okay. And usually, is there a certain number that you have to have before you hold that, or?
There isn't a certain number, but we'd like to have a large enough group so that it will facilitate discussion and really a learning exchange, if you will.
Is there a recertification period every so often for foster, those who have been?
The home does need to be recertified so that, it's part of the assessment and making sure that our foster homes are, meeting the standards that they need to be. So yes, the home does need to be recertified.
What's the average length of time, or is there an average that someone may be a foster parent or some?
That varies as well. You know, we have some that have been fostering with us for well over 10, 15 years, and we have some that maybe start out and maybe after a few years, either maybe they've had an adoption and so they decide to close, or, you know, their life circumstances may have changed and they've decided that, you know, fostering is no longer what they can do at that time.
So then they voluntarily would pull out, but then if they wanted to re-enter, then they would go through a training program again?
Exactly. They would just reapply and go through the process.
Do you find that people may recommend and have friends, let's say, or people they know that they're fostering and they bring other people into the fold?
I would definitely say word of mouth is definitely one of the best referrents for new foster parents, because there is something to be said about being able to either see firsthand someone you know well going through the process, and so they're able to give you firsthand accounts of, you know, the positives and the negatives. And so definitely I think that is one of our best referral sources, is friends and families that might make a recommendation. And then ads are actually pretty good as well. The public service announcements and ads, we find that we do get responses from those as well.
What is the financial commitment? Because obviously, you know, there are all kinds of commitments that you're making, but there has to be, I would guess, you know, there's a financial commitment. You're bringing someone into your home and taking care of them.
Yes. So there is foster care funds that are available for foster parents. I will say that it is not a lot, you know, you're not going to get rich doing this. Let me say that. So there are funding supports that are available. You know, certainly there are reimbursements for expenditures, but it is definitely, you're doing this because you want to be of help to someone. You're not doing this because you're going to get rich from it.
Oh, sure. But I know the realities. You know, kids need clothes.
Yes,
and kids need sneakers.
absolutely.
Kids need to eat.
Right.
You know,
So we have clothing allowances. There is a foster parent rate, and depending on whether, you know, there are different levels. So if it's a basic rate, if you're a therapeutic home, an exceptional home, and that's based on the youth that's in your home and whether, you know, their complexities, you know, rises to a higher level. So there are rates that go, you know, correspond with that. So there are foster care rates, and you know, so that certainly helps to defray some of the costs with taking in a child. But again, you know, I would just say that if you're doing this, it's definitely more because of the positive benefits of providing that care and support for the youth.
Mm-hmm. So I know you said there's going to be another training class coming up in the fall, but people, you know, you don't want to wait. It's spring now. You don't want to wait. So what can people do in the meantime, in a nutshell?
Well, they can certainly reach out to our department. Michelle Dow is our foster care supervisor. Her number is 518-447-4905, and can certainly get information. We also do collaborate with some of our voluntary agencies, and so if we are not necessarily having a training right away, we may look to see if one of our voluntary agencies are doing a more timely training, and we can, you know, we would certainly facilitate that.
Perfect. Well, we are out of time, and we only tip of the iceberg. We talked about one program for the Department for Children, Youth, and Families. You're going to have to come back again soon.
That is amazing.
Thank you, Gail.
Thanks, Mary.
Today, Gail Geohagen-Pratt, the Commissioner for the Albany County Department for Children, Youth, and Families. I'm Mary Rozak. This has been Albany County News. We'll see you again soon.